In this video, I'm going to show you a couple different ways to preload your grease wicks before you put them in your motor. And also, I'm going to share with you why I think preloading your grease wicks before you reinstall them is a good idea. Here are these little wicks. They're made out of a felt, and they're going to go back up inside the motor. Now, I like to preload these with grease. And it's not just putting grease on the wicks and rubbing it around. It actually helps if you heat the grease once you have the grease on the wicks. So there's two different ways that you can do this. I always start with this little spoon. I think it was a teaspoon rest that made its way out of my kitchen to my workbench. I put them on the spoon and I take my grease. You can put some under the wicks if you want. And then just kind of plop those grease wicks in there. If you have tweezers, even better. And some more grease on top. Now, you can roll these around in the grease, but if you heat this grease, it will actually start to absorb into the wicks. And there's two ways you can heat it. First way should be easy for everyone. A candle, and just holding the spoon or whatever you're using, just make sure it has a handle so you don't burn yourself, over the flame. Doesn't need to be touching the flame. And then just start kind of moving your grease wicks around, and you will see that they start to absorb the grease. Suddenly there'll be less grease than was there before. And you want to make sure you get the ends too. But what you'll notice is, if you can see the end of this wick, see the white in the center, that part hasn't absorbed the grease yet. And it won't 100% saturate the wick, but it is going to start the process. So this is one way. And if you do a lot of them, like I do, I use a heat gun. And in that case, I'm going from the top and heating the grease this way. So it's really whatever's easiest for you, but I just keep doing this. If I start to see it smoke, then I'm going to stop. I don't want to get it that hot. I just want to get it hot enough that it absorbs into those wicks. When I'm comfortable that they're fairly saturated, then they're ready to load. And you can see I'm seeing less white on the ends of these. They're starting to absorb the grease. Now, these are ready to reinstall back into the motor. Why do I preload them? I preload them because once I put them back into the motor, if I don't, I'm going to have to go back more often in the beginning after I replace them when I'm sewing, and I'm going to need to keep topping that grease port off a lot more than I usually would have to. You'll notice when you look down into the grease port, once the wick is inside, there's nothing in this one, but once it's in there, you can top it off with grease. You'll start sewing, and it may just be, a half an hour of sewing, and you'll check this port and it's already where you can't see the grease that you added. That's because your new wick is soaking up grease still. So preloading them stops you from having to reload this port so often, and you can just, sew, do what you really want to do. Either way, the first couple hours that you're sewing or so, you're going to want to check this port. This just makes it so you have to add less grease and you don't run the risk of having a dry wick that isn't actually lubricating the part that it's supposed to. So some of you have asked about this. That is how I preload my grease wicks. These are the ones that I sell on my website for the Featherweight and the 301. Hopefully that answers your questions. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.